As a start, I suggest a quick look back. You led some of the most impressive research and innovation European research project in the field of smart cities, of safe data, and even digital sovereignty. And you're also the former CTO of Barcelona city. So could you please share with us some of the main topics of these European R&D and I projects, and maybe also should tell us how you managed to establish some action plans around them from the beginning.
Yes, so it is great to be here and very happy to have this interview. Unfortunately, I cannot be personally in Paris. I would have loved to. So, yeah, it has been many, many years. I've been working on, let's say, democratizing technology. That's been a theme that's really cutting through the different projects I've been leading throughout, let's say, 15 to 20 years now, actually. And maybe the two more important projects of the last 10 years have been first the Decent project, which has been a large scale pan-European project for digital democracy, to rethink digital democracy. And this project started in 2000 no, there was oh my god, that was actually a long time ago, anyway, around 2012. And it was actually during the time where the big digital platforms started to grow and also to enter very strongly the field of democracy and democratic organization of social movements, of civil society, and of people. And we tried to provide alternatives. We tried to provide alternatives that were a platform where citizens could own their data, ethical platforms, but also the point was really about creating a space for real deliberation, participation, and decision making from the people. Also to regain trust in public institutions and to avoid, the kind of legitimacy crisis that we saw happening in democracy. After the Decent projects, where we managed to create the Decidim platform that now, it has been used by different cities throughout Europe for participatory democracy, but also it became the de facto, I think, European alternative to the likes of Facebook or for participatory democracy. So now it is used for the Conference on the Future of Europe, where hundreds of thousands of European citizens in all different languages are using it to define Europe's future policies from climate to employment, to education, to healthcare, and so on. So I think this is a very strong achievement. And then the second, I think, more important project has been Decode. And Decode was also a pan-European consortium to, let's say, reclaim data sovereignty for citizens. So we wanted to put forward a model that was alternative to the big tech owning our data and the digital platforms, but also alternative to the big state model that we see unrolling in China, kind of digital authoritarianism. So we wanted to show that between big tech surveillance capitalism and big state digital authoritarianism, there was a beyond these two, let's say, leading model for the future of the digital society, there was another possibility. And this other possibility, we framed it as a kind of big democracy needing a social contract in the digital society. And we understood that this social contract also had to deal with the question of the ownership and control over data. Why? Because as we know, data is the raw material of the digital age, of the digital society, and the business model of the digital platforms, of the big tech digital platforms, is based on the manipulation and monetization of personal information and data. And this is, first of all, contrary to our fundamental rights framework, work. It goes contrary to our data protection legislation, such as the European GDPR. But also, I think we really needed to show that people could be in control of their data through decentralized privacy enhancing and rights preserving data infrastructures, and decide what data they wanted to keep private, what data they wanted to share, with whom, and on what terms. And that's what we define a new deal on data. And we prototyped it in cities like Barcelona, Amsterdam, Helsinki, and also they became this kind of policies for let's say data sovereignty and democratic citizens participation. They became part of the Cities Coalition of Digital Rights led by the United Nations. So they became a little bit de facto standards for an alternative model for digitization.
Yeah, exactly. We can say that you inspired and you implemented a smart city model that is quite different from the Silicon Valley or the Toronto guru's vision. Let's say we could call it a highly innovative city of the future, but as you said, most importantly, one that is built directly with the citizens. And
Yeah.
how could you define, in fact, the foundation and the milestones of this model? And could we say this is a kind of European definition of smart city?
I hope so. I don't want to sound too optimistic because I think we still have a lot to construct. We still have to gain this fight. So I think we have to understand that this is absolutely critical to shape our future, but we still have to, have a lot of power from below in order to be able to affirm that there is an alternative model, and that this model is based about, is a question of civil liberties, of fundamental rights of citizens, of protection of our privacy, of our security, but also of our autonomy as human beings. And I think it is also important to understand that the smart city has nothing to do with technology in itself. So a lot of my work has been to move away from this kind of technology push model of the smart city, that it seemed that when we talk about digital city, it's about connectivity, blockchains, 5G, quantum, whatever, the new technological trend. That's not what's going to solve the big challenges that we're facing. We need to start with people's fundamental challenges, with our social and environmental challenges, which are, for example, affordable housing, the green and energy transition and the fight against climate change, sustainable mobility and reclaiming the public space in our cities, better healthcare, better education, better jobs. These are the policy objectives. And then only after we have to think, how can we democratically govern digital technologies, data, and artificial intelligence in order to, to leverage the power of the digital revolution to help us achieve those challenges, tackle those fundamental problems. And I think we can only do it with the participation of people. I think that's why I believe that Europe, let's say, democratic digitization model, which is basically saying we want to compete, but compete on our own terms with, with our principles and values and with democracy at the core. I think it can only work if we start from cities, if we start from the participatory democracy of communities, of people, of citizens, and then we take very seriously the questions, of course, of data sovereignty, of interoperability, of open and free software, open standards, and all of that, to basically create public goods, to create common goods. But again, I think that's where I started. In Barcelona in particular, when Ada Colau, she became a mayor of Barcelona, she called me up and she said, well, come and do this kind of democratic digital city approach in Barcelona. We started from democracy. We started from citizen participation, and we engaged in a large-scale participatory movement where I think the impressive, outcome was that 400,000 citizens were involved in shaping the policy of the city of Barcelona, and 70% of the proposals that became the action plan of the city was proposed directly from citizens. So I think this is the core of the question. How do we make it with citizens, and how do we make sure that we discuss what the future, smart for whom? Cities built with the citizens. So this is what the smart city is about. It's about shaping the future city starting from people's daily life problems and engaging them also in finding the right solutions, which is really about defining, a democratic politics for the city.
Yeah. So if we look at this technology for the European market, so yeah, they appear to be necessary not only for these sustainable cities, but also you can consider them for interesting to be for the competitiveness of our European companies. And in fact, there is a kind of trade-off. There's a kind of balance to find between the competitiveness on one side and the open standards on the other side. So do you believe that these goals of sustainability, competitiveness, and growth are still compatible altogether in Europe?
Mm. I believe that the European regulatory framework, let's say the new European constitution for the digital age, let's call it like this, because I think Europe is very bold and ambitious in proposing, a new types of regulation for the digital economy. For example, the Digital Service Act, the Digital Market Act, the Data Governance Act, the Artificial Intelligence Act, and all the different, and the GDPR, of course. This set of rules, of course, says that Europe is capable of being the regulatory superpower of the digital age. And I think also this is clear when the GDPR is now being adopted by many other countries beyond Europe. So it's becoming a de facto standard for digital privacy all around the world. And I think we've been doing also very well when it comes to antitrust and when it comes to digital taxation to push forward, deep reforms in this field. But I think this is not enough. I believe that this type of regulation should go hand in hand with Europe's capacity to compete on research and innovation, on scientific and technological innovation, because it's only then that we can create our own capabilities, whether it is in research centers and universities, whether it is creating new startups or scale-ups or new industries and companies, or whether it is really to spread this kind of innovation throughout society. So having really a citizen engagement. I think all of these elements need to be present, and we need to have technology which is made in Europe and that embeds these fundamental standards and rights and principles. Only then we can show to the world that this innovation model and innovation ecosystem can grow, scale, and it's possible to become an alternative. So this requires, of course, a lot of investment. And we have this opportunity now with Next Generation EU, because as you know, we are investing around 400 billion, more or less, in digitization. And also, 40% of the Next Generation EU, it's going to the green transition. And more digitization has to be for the green transition. We need to decarbonize the economy. We need to make it climate neutral. We need to move to a circular economy with bio-based material. We have to become carbon positive and so on. So we need to radically transform the business models, our value chains, and our supply chains in times, of course, of big disruption because of COVID, because of the war, and because of the strong inflation that we have. So it is important that digitization goes hand in hand with the green transition, but also that we are able to make it work. So we're able to be competitive. And this means scaling up, growing European companies that are able, for example, we need a European cloud We need a European standard for managing data, which is, I think, more decentralized. Definitely, privacy enhancing technologies can be a factor of next generation competitiveness for Europe. I think also data portability and interoperability can be our competitive advantage. And I think those standards can become a competitive advantage because if you can show you can grow companies that are also able to protect fundamental rights of people and the environment and scale a much more sustainable business model away from surveillance capitalism, I think that's where we need to be. So we need both, the regulatory environment, but also a digital industrial strategy, and then an innovation ecosystem which has, the right direction. And the right direction is sustainability, both social and environmental sustainability.
Yeah, and we all think that what all you said is increased furthermore with the COVID crisis and the climate change. I mean, this is something that we all feel more and more importantly every day. Now, regarding the scale and the focus, you as the city of Barcelona are focused mainly on large city challenges in deep urban context, but what about the mid-sized cities? What about the villages? What about the hinterland? Do you think it's possible to transform this European smart city model that you were referring before into something more adapted to smart country? And personally, have you ever come across or worked with people and with examples of smart villages?
Yeah, no, I really believe, actually, I'm discussing this topic a lot with Koolhaas, the famous architect, which is not talking about smart cities, but is actually talking about smart countrysides, and is saying precisely that we need to transform also the rural area. I think we understand this much better now with the food crisis all around the world, how it is important that the wealth is not only concentrated in cities, and also rethinking what I said before, rethinking supply chains and value chains, raw material dependency, secure supply chains will make us think also again beyond concentration of power too much in big metropolis. And I think
Yes.
that countries, for example, now that I'm in Italy working as a president of the Italian National Innovation Fund, when we think about smart cities, we don't really think about the big cities. We think about smart archipelagos. It's almost like, connecting the small villages, the borghi, which were the old towns. Italian, Renaissance towns are small. You need to retrofit the building to make them more sustainable. You need to really connect much more the rural areas with the old towns, and also making sure that connectivity it's much more widespread, so you have connected rural areas, you have difficult, where difficult areas such as internal areas and so on are actually connected, and you can transform those areas when it comes to sustainability and so on. And maybe it's helping us that with the COVID pandemic, we have, of course, accelerated digitization in a way that we are not anymore, having this conversation amongst technology experts, but it's really became about smart working, distance education, transforming the way we work at home, we work in the office. We understand that the fight against climate change should be a big rethinking of the mobility patterns, of the way we live, access to green areas. For example, there are very important projects about greening the cities, so bringing forests, bringing trees into the cities, and so on. And I want to mention that now I'm involved in this. I'm advising President von der Leyen for the new European Bauhaus project, which I think it's another tool because what the President that said is that the Green Deal, the EU Green Deal, needs a cultural movement. And when we are thinking about smart cities, smart countrysides, we need to act in a multidisciplinary way. So it's not only the technologists and the scientists and the engineers. We're going to need planners, architects, artists, designers, and so on. And to see artists, technologists, and scientists to work in a multidisciplinary way, as you know very well, because we have been involved together in the STARS project from the European Commission that has tried to pilot this kind of multidisciplinary open innovation model. I think, this is going to be a lot about transforming our built environment. Also, when it comes, of course, to the industry, supply chains, and so on, because we need to transform it and make it more sustainable. But when it comes to design new public spaces, after COVID, we have office buildings that are left unused. We have big shopping malls that are not used because of the digital transition and so on. So we have to be able to rethink the use of public space and to make sure that this green transition will be also about redesigning public spaces for the people, for the reimagine the way we live together. So I think this is going to be very important, and this is not going to be only about the big cities.
Yes, okay, thank you. And to maybe as a conclusion, because we live in this special context of European war and the fifth wave, or this maybe already the sixth wave of COVID, do you think this awareness of local risk and global risk are going to encourage us to take more daring decisions, in your opinion, like regarding the investigation of technology in our daily life, that to change the things differently in this kind of local and global equilibrium we have to find on our daily stakes now?
Yeah,
what do you think?
do
you think it's a new era? I mean,
I definitely think we are facing a shock, which is absolutely that is very destabilizing. I think the combination of the COVID pandemic with the war, with multiple crises, which is also healthcare crisis, economic crisis, and social crisis, and now with the strong inflation and the rethinking of the geopolitical alliances that are very tied to the two transition, the energy transition on one side, but also digitization, that on one side has created a lot of opportunity, but on the other side is really creating a concentration of industrial power, of social power, of political power that's unprecedented. So many things need to be changed and fixed, and I think we cannot do that with with the business as usual. We cannot go ahead with the status quo. So we need to put forward alternatives, forward-looking projects, but and also, as I said at the beginning, not only accelerate this transition, but give a direction. And I think the direction is about social and environmental sustainability and a more democratic digitalization. But I think really for me, what's very important is that these words like digital and sustainability are not just words that we continue to use, innovation, sustainability. Let's make it real. So what I'm really interested is to work exactly with people, in particular with young people that really feel the urgency of change, that feel the urgency of climate justice, that are really eager to transform this society. But let's make it real. Let's apply it. Let's create real projects in cities that transform our community and our environment. So even with the digitization, I don't think we should continue to grow this kind of advertising fueled digital economy that's monetizing data and people's behavior in a way that's really detrimental for democracy and society. We have negative externalities that are really about what kind of world are we building? So I think we have to rethink the economic and social model, and we have to put digitization at the service of people and the environment and make it real. So embedded in concrete projects that can transform the life of people. So we need the participation of people to make this transition real. Also because otherwise, and this we have to take seriously, people are going to ask us, who is going to pay for this transition? We see it already now with the increasing cost of life, increasing energy prices. People are fed up, they are protesting, they just cannot live in this unsustainable way, but they want to be part of this change, of this transition. So we have to find a way to engage people, make them part of the solution, avoid populism and nationalism, which is, by the way, bringing us into this war. And I think the only way we can do it is, yes, of course, through democratic participation, but with a clear experimental view of where we're going. So I hope we are able to transform this big shock into an opportunity for a democratic, green, and more participatory future.
Thank you, Francesca. This is a great conclusion for hope and doing this. Yeah. Thank you very much sharing with us your insightful knowledge and experience. And we'll probably see you later in some European projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much and have a great conference.